That music means it's time for BRAP. It's Wednesday, and after a week hiatus, we're back and really excited. Hold on just a sec here. Make some quick adjustments. No, really excited for today's show. We have actually two returning guests. And by the way, the BRAP guys will be here shortly, but we have two returning guests. We have Game Logic, who was with us last time we went live. Game Logic, what's going on, man? How are you today?
I'm good, man. How are you guys?
Doing well, man. Doing well, man. It's this week is flying by. How this year's flying by, man. It's. I mean, we're at the end of April, so yeah, time's flying. So, but great to have you back on, man. Definitely appreciate it. We also have returning guests. We have the great Jeff Grubb in the house. What's up, Jeff?
Not much. Glad to be here. How you doing?
Good, man. Good. Thanks for. I know you're busy, so definitely appreciate your time. Happy that you could join us.
No problem.
A little bit of a slow news week. A little bit of a slow news week.
It's been slow the last couple weeks, actually.
It has. I think people have been fabricating things to get upset about.
Kind of every week there's something new. It does seem like some weeks there's two things. Like, yeah, it does seem like that.
Yeah, there was two interesting debates that we talked about before we went live. One of them was David Jaffe referring to footage of God of War Ragnarok as DLC, and that causing some issues. And then a debate I saw around whether or not Horizon Forbidden West is a Western RPG. Yeah. Needless to say, the things that people get upset about are often trivial to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting too old for this.
I mean, people, when there's nothing to talk about, when there's no news, people got to just keep themselves entertained. And for some reason, they don't go just play video games. They just make up bullshit online. But oh well.
Yeah, exactly. Although there's other entertaining things going on right now, at least for me, outside of video games, and that is the civil lawsuit. Johnny Depp and his ex-wife. God, I forgot her name now.
Amber Heard.
Amber Heard.
Yep.
And people have coined her Amber Turd.
Yep.
Because
she pooped in the bed, right?
Now, did she? Okay.
I don't know. This is what they say on the internet. I don't know. I have not been paying attention to this all that closely. I've gathered that someone on TikTok was like, she pooped in the bed. I'm like, well, okay, there you have it. Someone on TikTok said it, so it's got to be what's happening. Well, that's about as much as I thought about it. And then I occasionally will see, before this trial started, I would occasionally see like one of them trending, and I would look in on it, and it would just be like 4,000 insane people who are just obsessed with hating Amber Heard because she was mean to Johnny Depp. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna back out of this room slowly. So that's my exposure to it. Beyond that, I don't know much what's going on.
It's kind of like console wars in some sense. Like you have like your team Amber, and then you have team Depp, right? And I did see it. Like I have been watching this trial unfold. And like I said, it's happening in my backyard. It's in Fairfax, Virginia, which is
are you selling tickets to seats to your backyard?
So
no, people can watch.
No, I'm not. Actually, I should have like a watch party, right? So have a concession stand, sell a lot of alcohol and food, and yeah. But no, it's crazy because I still haven't figured out why it's happening in Fairfax. Maybe I think it has to do with the fact that she did this op-ed in the Washington Post, which is in my backyard as well. Yeah, Fairfax, where this trial's happening, is about an hour from where I live. So it's, I mean, this is kind of, I think, a big deal for us because it's celebrities, and the only celebrities we tend to get in Washington, D.C. tend to be of the political affiliation.
Right. You get the ugly celebrities, the politicians, right?
Yeah, we get like the Donald Trumps,
ugliest.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of, what's his name? We billionaires like Bezos, and I don't even know how to pronounce his last name correctly. Is it Bezos?
Right. Jeff Bezos. Well, who gives a fuck? He's got enough money. You can get his name
the rich
wrong.
Guy. The rich guy. Yeah. Yeah. He owns a Washington Post here, and then we have crooked Dan Snyder, who allegedly has maybe held money back that was owed to the NFL and teams. I mean, so that's we get political scandals, man. That's what we get here. So this is kind of interesting. I feel like this is something you probably see more in California, in a California courtroom. But yeah, I mean, it's this thing has really caught my attention. I have it. Big shout out to Hogue Law. Hogue was actually on a podcast watching this live with I think some other lawyers, and they were kind of as the trial was streaming the trial live. They were kind of giving their viewpoints on it. But yeah, I mean, apparently it's alleged that she defecated on the bed. Maybe it was her or someone else, but yeah, that happened. It's just like hearing
there was
these
a poop in the bed. That's what matters.
Yeah, and exactly. And she's like, "Oh, it wasn't me. It was the dogs." And he's like, "Nah, that doesn't look like dog poop." It just, yeah.
Johnny Depp spent 30 minutes explaining that he knows better than any man alive what human feces looks like. It's a hell of a trial, everybody.
Exactly. It's fascinating to say the least. I mean, you see that in fact, and it's interesting that you see that there's. I think sometimes with celebrities we forget that they're humans just like us. They're flawed just like us, when we tend to, I think some people, I don't, but some people do put these individuals on pedestals, kind of prop them up, if you will.
Yeah, with Johnny Depp, that stopped when I read it was like it was a Rolling Stone profile of him or something, and there was this story about how he considers himself a very funny man, and his example of that was when they were filming Pirates of the Caribbean, like he would try to sneak in things like Dirty Sanchez, and he's like, "Oh, I'm saying these dirty sex acts. I'm gonna sneak them into the movie. Aren't I funny?" And I'm like, "Oh man, you are sad." Like
that is not funny.
Yeah, he just thinks he's hilarious, and like he's very clearly not. He was very handsome, so people probably did laugh at his jokes. And I'm like, okay, he just got a big head, and I'm like, okay, I kind of can't look up to this guy at all. And then you find out all this weird stuff with this whole divorce stuff, and I'm like,
yeah.
BRAP, what about video games?
I know we're gonna get to video games here. It just wasn't a topic, Jeff, but I did want to, and I've been meaning to ask you about this for some time, but E3 was canceled again, right?
Yes.
Is E3 and by the way, great timing by Jeff Keighley.
I mean, he knew what was happening. I mean, he knows. Yeah. I mean, he's known for years, and he's just been building up and ready to go, and just getting the pieces put into place, and then checkmate. It's basically the plot of Independence Day. He's just moving his little ships around, getting them in place, and then when the time was right, he striked, and here we are. Yeah.
So real quick before we get to that, I was rude. I didn't say hello to the chat. What's up, everyone in the live chat? Thank you so much for joining us. Please hit that like button if you haven't done so already. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link in the live chat. Please retweet. Big shout out to Level 1 Gaming. That's Fame Entertainment. Good to see you, Fame. And everyone else in the live chat. Yeah, so, I mean, is E3, is it done? Is this it? Is this the nail in the coffin?
I mean, I think so. I think if it comes back next year, it'll probably come back. It'll probably limp back next year, and it'll be pretty sad. It'll be even more pathetic than it has been. And people be like, okay, I guess we did it this year, and next year we might just skip out on it entirely. I think maybe they come back for 1 or 2 years if they do come back at all, and then it's gone forever until like some brand comes along, and then like in 10 years, so like we're bringing back E3, and it's going to be kind of like a fan event and stuff like that, and they'll do that eventually, but that won't be what E3 really was. So I mean, yeah, this is I tell you what's like the nails in the coffins really are is that the things that were once aligned with E3, like Judges Week, which is a thing where a bunch of press would go out and play games and get them early and be able to like get a look at them. And it wasn't always all the biggest announcements, but it's games that like, were pretty big and that companies wanted to have considered for game of the show, like the official game of the show and stuff like that. Well, I mean, Jeff Keighley's doing that this year, and it's or at least I think he is. I'm not aware. I'm not invited, but my impression was that he was going to do that this year. And if if he does that, he's going to start sending out invites pretty soon. And like, okay, like things are just going to go on as they need to without E3. And so when E3 comes back, what need will we have for E3 at all? Like people are going to solve the problems that they have without an E3. And then if E3 tries to come back, it's just the ESA is going to be completely useless, not going to be able to justify any sort of fees they want to charge these publishers and stuff to come to a real show. it's not gonna make a lot of sense. So effectively, yes, I think E3 is dead.
Oh my God, that's crazy. I mean, E3's been such a staple for so many years. Who can forget Sony's announcement of the PlayStation? What was it, $299? They just went up there and like $299. And I think that was in response to Sega's bumbling of the what was it, the not Dreamcast,
the Saturn.
Thank you, the Saturn. Yeah,
so they launched the Saturn early that day. It confused everybody. It made the retailers all mad because they're like,
all
wait,
mad,
we didn't know about this. And then it was like $399, and then Sony just came out and said $299. Like, well, they had a really long, boring spiel from one guy, and it was intentionally boring so that when the guy would come up, he's like, all right, now we have a special presentation from, I can't remember the guy's name. But he's like, okay, he comes up and all he says is $299, and that's it, and he walks away, and everyone realizes what is happening, that they're doing that they've been showmanshiped over here, and it's like, oh my God, that's $100 cheaper than the Saturn, and it looks so cool and it looks pretty good, and they have like so much support, and it comes out. And the thing about the PlayStation, it was so much cheaper to make than the Saturn, because the Saturn was this really complicated piece of hardware that they just kept undercutting them. Every time Sega would try to drop the price of the Saturn, PlayStation's like, nope, $100 cheaper, $50 cheaper. We're always going to keep it cheaper than the Saturn. So they just were cutthroat against Sega, and it started right there.
Yeah, no, it did. It definitely did. And that was one of the big, to me, that's still, I think, the biggest mic drop moment at E3. I know everyone talks about the Shuei and I forget his name now.
Adam
Boyce, sharing the content. So, but yeah, it's I hope it comes back. I mean, I don't want. I've always wanted to go to E3. Maybe that never happens, but I do hope it does come back because it was a big look. It's a big event. It was a big deal, and it's just unfortunate. With the ESA.
I liked it a lot. It a lot. I'll miss it. Absolutely.
Yeah, but now we have things like PAX. I mean, PAX East kicks off this weekend.
Yeah, if you're a fan, don't try to go to E3. Go to PAX. PAX is much more built for fans, and people can like actually stand in line and play a couple of games, and there's a ton of other stuff to do.
Mm-hmm.
E3 never figured out that side of stuff, and all they ended up doing when they started inviting fans in was make it a worse experience for everybody. It was bad for the fans. It was worse for the press because they started putting everything behind closed doors, and so you could only get in with your meetings. And so it's like, okay, I'm spending half my time in email, making sure I have all my meetings set up. So, I still liked it. E3 is great. There's something special about E3. There's something special about these companies coming together and competing head to head that I think always brought out the best in them. And there will still be venues for that occasionally, but yes, with E3 gone, and they were, Sony was already not at E3 right for the last several years, and EA and Activision, Activision was in and out a couple times, but EA is doing their own thing. So yeah, like it was already waning, whether it's here physically or not, or even digitally. So, but still, the industry was better when those companies were competing on the same grounds in the LA Convention Center. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's the other thing I was Sony not being there, was that kind of like the start of maybe the downfall of E3? Do you think? Like obviously Sony's in the PlayStation, the power of that brand, the gaming industry, them saying, hey, you know what? We're not going to be there. We don't need to be. And actually kind of pulling it off, right?
Yeah, I mean, it started before that, though. The downfall was like Activision leaving the first time, and then I think EA might have pulled out before Sony. But the writing was on the wall for a very long time that these companies realized they could talk to gamers themselves, and the ESA charged way too much money to be a part of the E3 show floor. So, the writing was on the wall long before Sony pulled out. But I mean, it obviously didn't help. I mean, it didn't help. Like the marquee image of E3 was always Xbox on this side, like the Xbox and PlayStation in the same hall, and there was a hallway you could walk down on the show floor where it was Xbox on one side, PlayStation on the other side, and you could like touch each one with your arm if you were big enough or whatever. And so it's okay, yeah, they really are here in the same exact space. And that was amazing. That was cool. And once that went away, something was definitely lost. But I still think the showcases that we did get through some of those years were still pretty impressive. And most recently, I think Microsoft had their best one in years. I think they still are, but they're still due to have probably a better one eventually, but it was still their best one in years. Like that's not probably best one in like a decade. Nintendo's directs have always been pretty good. Nintendo, when they had their show floor, Like the Zelda Breath of the Wild show floor was just like a theme park ride almost. It was so beautiful set up with all their like statues and
Oh
all the
wow.
decorations. It was fantastic. And they had this like like how you cook the food in the game where you throw it all in the thing and it all
Yep.
bounces around. They actually had an animatronic that would do that. It's great stuff. And then they had New Donk City set up for Mario when that was coming out. They just went all out. And in the last year, they didn't. They pulled back on that stuff. They had a big open space where people could come play games, and they had their Nintendo Treehouse Live stuff going, and that was sort of the centerpiece of their show. But I still could go to the secret Nintendo booth, which is behind the Nintendo booth. You talk to the lady, you go upstairs, and then the PR lady takes you upstairs to play all the games, like on one kiosk and stuff like that. And that's kind of the stuff that I needed to do my job. And I always really appreciated that. It was always great to have, to get a chance to have those relationships manifest in reality. And that was the stuff that was important about E3 to me. But the consumer-facing stuff, I think Jeff Keighley's going to do just fine, mostly playing air traffic controller for that stuff this year. Better than he has in the last couple of years, I think, anyhow.
Yeah, that's a great point. What's up, Slow-Mo? You there, Slow-Mo? Maybe he's not there. All right. We'll get to Slow-Mo.
He's here in our hearts.
Yeah, he is. He's exactly. So, Game Logic, any thoughts on E3, man? Did we lose Game Logic?
No, can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah,
hear
there
you.
you are.
Yeah, I was a little afraid to speak because I've been sitting back here monkeying with the settings on my Go XLR, so I wasn't sure if I was guessing right or guessing wrong.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Hey, one question I wanted to ask Jeff is, I have tons of thoughts on E3, but I want to take the time to ask Jeff, what are you guys seeing? And I'm not clear kind of what your guys' editorial staff setup is at GamesBeat, but, back in the day, 10 years ago, maybe further, you would come into the games media and E3 would be something that you would be aspiring to go to, right? That was a thing that was part of your big on-ramping and you were looking forward to. Do the kids, do the new writers coming into the industry, like, what are they excited about? Like that used to be such a huge orchestration, and you got people would eventually get around to the point where they had kind of E3 ops centers and where they would run everything, and then video got incorporated and all that stuff, and now they kind of don't have that. So has anything replaced that, or is there, like I said, a disappointment between that generation versus the older generation?
There's people. Yeah, it's what I always aspired to go to was E3, and as it's sort of faded away, it's like there is sort of a gap in that aspirational aspect, and in terms of like the content. You're right that these companies would, like GameSpot and IGN and a couple others maybe were exhibitors at E3. They would have their own booths and they would run their stage floor shows from the stage floor where, instead of going out to like Nintendo's booth, Nintendo would just come to them, and it was like this big deal, and they had it all set up that way, and it was impressive and enabled them to pump out a ton of content. It was like these well-oiled machines, and that there is sort of no replacement for that right now. They do try to replicate that stuff a little bit with like Comic-Con and a little bit with PAX, but it's not the same thing at all. And really the problem is like there's just not like 150 companies bringing new games to one place like they were with E3. So there is no really great replacement. I do think that the eventual goal for Keighley probably is to try to replicate as much of that as possible. I don't know how interested he is in necessarily running a big show floor, something to replace that, but he could partner with, the company that runs PAX. I'm trying to Repop. Repop could, hey, do you want us to like go out and buy the E3 name, or do you just want us to have a Summer Game Fest show floor? Like, what should we do here? Can we partner with you? Like, you help us get these companies to come, and we will get all of the logistics figured out. It would sort of have to be that to replace what we had with E3. There is sort of nothing that can match that in terms of its scale and its ability to bring everybody in the industry together that way.
So another thing I want to ask is, and these are just my own kind of personal perspectives on the matter. There was a big row last fall about the VGAs and like what games got nominated into what categories.
Sure.
One of the things, and the VGAs do a thing. They fill a space. I think it's an important space and a thing that people need. I don't give them as high regard as I give some other awards like DICE and GDC and the BAFTA awards. one of the concerns, and one of the reasons I don't is because I feel like there's a high degree of commerciality and kind of commercial motivation behind where the VGAs are vectored from a content perspective that I feel like you don't necessarily have as much with some of those other ones. In particular, some of those other ones are industry awards, so it's actual developers, and creative directors and producers voting across the industry. So, how would you think a Jeff Keighley oriented VGA E3 oriented E3 would be in comparison to what the with the ESA in place? And I'm sure there was tons of money changing hands with that as well. But do you feel a Keighley oriented E3, which would be funded and backed by players in the industry, would kind of be canted and tilted a little differently in terms of who got the spotlight, who was given priority, and kind of how that Judges Week kind of went down that you mentioned earlier before?
Yeah, I think so. Jeff Keighley always ran the Judges Week. That was the weird thing about it, and he kind of like associated with E3, and he was associated with E3. Like there was a famous breakup in like 2019, right, when there was like, oh, they're struggling to figure this out. I'm out. I'm gonna go do my own thing. The way the ESA works, I mean, it is like the advocacy group in Washington, or supposedly that's what it's supposed to be. It kind of has failed to be that recently, but that's the idea, is that it's going to be the lobbyist firm for the games industry. And so it is also being funded by all these companies directly. That's the whole idea. I think the slight difference in tilt would come from most of those companies would probably balk at the idea of paying a lot of money to Jeff Keighley, most of them. Nintendo's not going to pay him $150,000 to be in his show or something like that. They're going to do their own thing, and if he wants to say it's part of Summer Game Fest, they will allow him to do that. And so with E3, the companies were paying to be in E3, and they were paying a lot of money. They were paying way more than $150,000 in many cases, especially if they had a pretty sizable booth on the show floor with like internet and stuff, and they would like charge this insane premium to have internet access on the show floor, that sort of thing. The difference in tilt would be that it would probably be a huge marketing exercise. I mean, it already is going to be like that. We're already going to see, Summer Game Fest is going to have like its fast food sponsors and energy drink sponsors, and there will be game companies that come in as sponsors. Like, if Jeff Keighley talks to Nintendo will put Nintendo's game in there. Jeff Keighley would put Nintendo's game in there. That if you are Sony or Microsoft or something like that, you have a game you want to show, that he would take that and he would take it for free. But if you are of a certain caliber where he's like, hey, listen, we're pretty booked, but here's our menu of options if you want to like pay to be in there, like he'll do that. And so that is slightly different, but also like how that would translate to a show floor. I mean, the show floor was already kind of turning into that in those last couple of years, because a lot of booth space was empty. There was a lot of people just not filling in those gaps. And so the ESA would sell them to like energy drink companies, and they would be, giving away energy drinks. And in the last year, they were just straight up selling energy drinks to consumers and not even like paying attention to the press, which is just like completely this weird antithetical thing to what E3 always was. And I get they were trying to figure out what to change it into, but it was weird to see. So E3 was already such a mess that any sort of like trying to figure out how to squeeze money out of that brand, which doesn't seem like it should be too hard, but it definitely got hard there at the end for some reason, is going to look pretty similar no matter who's behind it, I think. So yeah, it could be a different tilt, but it's not going to be all that odd compared to where that show was going in the first place.
So are you saying the E3 show floor was becoming kind of like a big ad?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, yeah, I mean, it always was like an ad to retail, right? Retail and the press and to the mainstream press and stuff like that. But then it was becoming very much like we are trying. We're going to buy this booth space because we're expecting to appeal to consumers and maybe even like sell a lot of merch to make up the cost of this booth space at the show. So yes,
it's interesting because I think I've heard a lot of other stuff about ads this week.
BRAP, oh yeah,
there you go.
Any better than
there
that.
That's called a segue.
That's called a great segue. What's up, Slow-Mo?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Great to see you, man.
I'm
How are you
good.
today?
Doing good. What's up, Logic? What's up, Grub?
What's up, Slow-Mo? How you doing, man?
Hey, I can't complain. It's been
I hear you.
decent day.
Let me grab some super chats real quick before we get to that segue. That was a great segue, by the way, Game Logic. We got Game Over Brian with the $5 super chat. Says, hey, BRAP and panel, question for you this full show or DLC question for Jeff. When upgrading Final Fantasy VII Remake to PS5, does trophies pop automatically? That's
I know this one. They do. They, in fact, do.
They do. Game Over Brian again with the $2 super chat. Says, shout out to my pony, bro, Slummo. Click clack, bro. That is for you, Slummo.
God. Here we go. Yeah, I guess I'm a pony today, sure. Yeah.
You are, yeah. Depending, you know you're doing something right when you get called both things. Like depending on the week, you're either one, right?
Right.
Yeah, but let's talk about game ads
because no one ever calls me a Nintendo drone or whatever.
I don't even know. Is there a name for Nintendo?
I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't think. I don't know. I really don't. That's interesting. We have ponies and we have Xbots, right? So, but there's nothing for Nintendo people, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, there probably is, but it's like they're not really in that conversation. Like the people that are calling each other ponies and Xbots are talking to each other because they don't even see Nintendo as like the same thing to get mad about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Meanwhile, the those of us that play on PC are also sitting from our mansions looking. I'm just joking.
No, but really, we're not joking.
Yeah, no, I'm on my Steam Deck drinking my iced tea and my $1,000 hammock. Yeah,
exactly. Right. Oh, I'm still waiting for my Steam Deck. Mooch got his today, by the way, so that's awesome.
Very excited for him.
Mine should be coming in tomorrow.
Oh man, mine says Q2 still. Like,
I'm gonna get email very soon.
Get that EMU deck. Just you can just download it straight from the desktop mode, and it'll set up all the ROMs and stuff for you. I mean, you have to get your own ROMs, but it's a great way to play old games. I've been playing Flipnik for PlayStation 2 on it all week. It's great.
Oh wow! All right, I'm gonna have to, Jeff.
I'm gonna turn mine into a Switch Pro.
There you go. Yes, absolutely. It'll help you with EMU deck. Will help you with that as well. Absolutely.
Nice.
You know what? That's the other great thing about playing on PC. I joked around with someone today. I said, "Oh, by the way, Nintendo games play best on PC too." Wink, wink.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we condone pirating, by the way. I want to throw that message in there.
Do crimes.
What's that?
I said do crimes. Sorry.
No, don't do crimes. But yeah, I said that today. But that, it's Slow-mo. That I'm actually looking forward to that. It's funny you say that because when I get mine, I'm going to turn mine to what the Switch should have been. And I can't wait to play some of these games on the Steam Deck. So, all right. So, in-game ads. Great segue, by the way, Game Logic. We have news that Nintendo. No, why am I saying Nintendo? Not Nintendo. That Microsoft and Sony may be looking at putting in-game ads in games. Now, I don't think this idea is any. I mean, like Burger King's done ads in like FIFA, I think, and I think there's been some other games that have had some advertisements built in, and there's marketing built into things like Fortnite. Remember the big Travis Scott event? Did he like drop from the sky in the game or something? I don't play Fortnite, but I thought that's what maybe happened. But
yeah, he was a giant. Yeah.
Was that the okay? So yeah, so there was that
giant man rapping at you. It seemed very cool, actually.
Yeah, I got a lot of people were like watching that. But yeah, so I mean, so this idea isn't necessarily new. Now I'll go to you, Jeff. Go ahead, Game Logic.
Yeah, if you want. So I do want to do a break in and do a clarification.
Go ahead, man.
Because I think this will become important. Because if we get into it, we may go through kind of the chronology of monetization in the gaming industry. This is different in that it is not the same thing as we had kind of, Jesus, I hate to say it, at the turn of the century in the early 2000s, right? When you go through the kind of chronology of monetization of the gaming industry, one of the first major bumps of the timeline in terms of a change of kind of the old standard kind of X number of dollar flat fee model, right, for a purchase at a retail counter. Was the desire for the industry to inject ads into games. That model was game development companies, right, coding into the game itself presentation of a product.
Like, yeah, on the disc. Like you can go back and get those discs right now and still see many of those ads.
Right, exactly.
Like I think there's still ads for Obama's election in if you go back to what is it, Burnout Paradise. I think you can still see those billboards.
Right, and what we're talking about now is a vastly different thing, which is in fact, I mean, I would actually kind of castigate maybe some journalists who have kind of labeled their articles as such, in terms of putting ads in games. What they are doing is they are enabling ad tech into games for developers so that developers can, if they are able to encourage ad tech companies to do it, wire ad tech into the presentation of ads in a game. One of the ways that's vastly different is that that's a live presentation. So when you kind of look at your browser and you look at ads that are coming across your browser, it's not like, pick a site. I don't think VentureBeat maybe does the ads in the same way that most other sites do, but let's just say that, for example, when you see ads on there, it's not like VentureBeat or GamesBeat like woke up that morning and decided, hey, on my ad carousel, I'm going to present, Progressive Insurance, right? There's a company behind that has a whole channel catalog of dozens, hundreds of different companies that have subscribed into that service to have them present ads. And that ad tech company, which is basically a front for, like I said, hundreds of other companies behind it.
And they're all bidding for appealing to certain audiences that might be listening, watching, playing now. Yeah.
Right. And so those ads are served live, which is one of the reasons why, security-minded people don't like ad tech, because it is kind of an invasive content presentation right into your browser that is kind of a foreign bit of material and is not kind of the native part of the website. And so when you talk about games and what we're talking about now, we're talking about enabling ad tech for the delivery of ads by a third party right into the fabric of the game presentation layer.
Oh man, I'm imagining like getting a group together, like let's buy ads that we can inject code into this game remotely. That would be incredible. Obviously it's a nightmare, but yeah, like it's totally yeah, you're right. Like I think the thing here is that programmatic ads are here, they're everywhere. I mean, you listen to a podcast and you're like, oh, they recorded all these ads specifically for this podcast. Like, no, many podcasts serve up programmatic ads based on who they think you are as you download it from the server right then. So it's like, yeah, everyone is doing programmatic ads now. To me, it sounds like both Xbox and PlayStation are considering this. I think they're mostly considering it for their free-to-play games, right? That seems to be where they are targeting this. And I mean, maybe that's just where it starts, but also that to me, that also has always felt inevitable. We would always get back to this point where they try to figure out ways to bring ads into games, and now this is just where the ad business is at. And performance marketing is everything. It is like, we have people dedicated to that are, economists and psychologists, and we know how to get the most out of this stuff. And we want to put it everywhere we possibly can. And I'm not surprised that we've gotten to this point. Now, I mean, is it a good thing? I mean, God, all of the like someone put it out this tweet today, but something I've always felt. Whenever we start talking about these problems about these companies trying to figure out every way to squeeze every last dollar out of their games, and we can get mad at these companies, we really can, but there is a larger system at play in capitalism that is encouraging these companies to do this at every turn, to really make poor decisions at every turn if it serves the bottom line. And clearly this is another example of this. And yeah, we could shout at Microsoft and Sony for wanting to do this, but if they weren't to do this, and they would have to answer to their shareholders, and the shareholders would not understand why they would not do this. And it's an unfortunate byproduct of where we're at now. An alternative probably wouldn't change that all that much, because Microsoft and Sony would always still kind of be who they're going to be. But my dream was always like a viable, publicly funded alternative marketplace would be very cool, so that we could have all these games as an alternative and not necessarily try to legislate out advertising in games, which is, again, as I said, feels inevitable. Although with security concerns, like, gamers are very vocal and very tuned into this stuff, and if something does seem sketchy, if it does seem like it creates vulnerability in a way that we don't with websites, in a way that we don't when we're listening to podcasts or like programmatic ads that show up on our television shows, if that stuff causes any problems with our games, any sort of performance issue, these companies are going to hear about it, and we will get loud, and this could turn into a debacle for them, just like so many decisions they've made have. So I'll be interested to see if they can find a way to pull this off without getting that backlash.
I think they'll probably get that backlash whether it causes performance issues or
Right.
not. Especially if you come like we're talking about free to play games. I thought about, um, for example, Warframe. Right, Warframe is a free to play game. You can access all the content to Warframe with no additional charge. Of course, if you want to really get deep into it, you're gonna have to spend some money or do a lot of grinding to trade for items, whatever. But it's a free game. Warframe takes place in like a gazillion years in the future of the solar system. Just like the fact that like you would be starting a mission and there's going to be some kind of ad or some kind of way
There's
the
space
product
Coca-Cola
placement.
now, Slomo. What are you
Yeah,
talking about? Stardust Coca-Cola. It's from the
right.
future.
Rocket Mortgage. Hey, refinance your home. Like right when I'm about to start it. Like look, that's kind of
Rocket
it's like
mortgage. Oh my
it's
god.
it's immersion breaking.
Slow mo. Do you need to
the worst thing-
Wi-Fi?
The worst part is going to be when it's the stuff that you looked up on Amazon, right? Those little. I mean, listen, I'm mostly at a point in my life where I agree to let them target ads at me. Whatever, target ads at me. I'm over it. Do it. But in a game, if I see the sweater I consider getting, or they're showing me 14 other sweaters because I just bought the sweater I needed, now I don't need another one, I will be like, okay, this actually, if it fails to be incorporated in a way that does make sense, I will be frustrated. And it's not like we're going to have loading screens for that much longer, right? Like you put the ads on the loading screens. Well, we just, we all paid a lot of money to get SSDs specifically so we won't have to see loading screens anymore. So they're going to have to integrate it into the fiction of their worlds. That's going to, I mean, listen, I don't know if Warframe is going to be one that's going to be like jumping on this bandwagon because they're very mindful of like what their fans want. But you're right to say
Right.
there will be examples like that of games that are this futuristic setting, and they will have to find a way to incorporate ads, and they're gonna fail because I don't see a good way of to pull that off.
Yeah, I think it. Actually, I don't think it worked. I barely played Death Stranding, but what I did play, in just like the 3 hours of gameplay, I
Yeah,
saw a
Monster.
whole lot of Monster, and I'm just
And
like,
the
Monster.
AMC ads were even worse. Did you see the ads for the AMC shows?
no.
So you go take a shower with Norman Reedus.
Yeah,
and
the AMC shows.
The whole like shower door,
The shower
turn
door.
into a screen, and it'd be like, watch AMC's Ride with Norman Reedus, and it's like it was so bizarre.
I think that's when he was taking a shit. That actually came out because because he was going to the bathroom and it made a motorcycle noise, like he was like like farting, I guess.
What?
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
Kojima, it's Kojima. So like he can pull it off because when it's absurd, it's hilarious because it's Kojima. He's always had like weird ads in his games. Like I mean, he had like the cup of noodle in Metal Gear Solid and stuff like that. There's always examples of ads that he goes to. Now, Death Stranding had more of those, and it was more auspicious, like it was more conspicuous.
And it wasn't game breaking or anything like that. Like it wasn't.
It wasn't game breaking, and it's fun when it's him because it's like all part of his persona of just going all out and not really giving a fuck, and still yet like caring more about his stories than anyone else alive. So it works in that case, but it's not going to work in every case.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess is this okay? So you guys, I've heard free to play games. This is where this is going to go. Do you guys think that this is going to creep in? And I know we just talked about Death Stranding and some product placement there by Kojima, but could this be a situation where this creeps into, what I call the regular games, the non free to play games, the AAA games, the games we pay $60, $70 for. Could that happen, especially if the ads seem to work and are generating revenue for companies?
There's a couple where I think they would, like I mean, Grand Theft Auto Online, right? You put up some billboards in that world. That's not the end of the world, and that's a lot of people looking at your ads all the time. I think and you bring in real world products into a game like that. In the games that have lasted for years and years and years, and games where it would be easy to integrate, I do think that over time they're like, listen, you already have all this tech built into your platform. Why are you gating us from using it? Like we're the ones who will have to take the hit. At a certain point that'll be true. I think right now we are talking about Microsoft and Sony enabling this, but in a couple of years it'll be like well, hasn't it always been there? We'll just feel like it's always been a part of it. And then when the developer decides to use it, then we'll get mad at the developer. And the developer like, listen, let us take the hit. We're going to make money on this. We want to do it. And I think something like a Grand Theft Auto Online would be a prime example of that.
So you don't see a situation where, let's say, like God of War 2025
No.
would have like like Kratos playing, oh, like you walk past and Kratos is holding an axe that's made by steel, the people that make the chainsaws and stuff like
Yeah.
we wouldn't see anything like that. You don't think?
I
don't think so.
I mean, I think there are still some industry and commercial and technical, canyons to kind of cross before we get right. Essentially, all that's been announced is what is basically not much more, not a skosh more than what you would evaluate when a patent gets announced, right? It's just a possibility. Although, there are rumors that these companies are intending to implement this. But one of the things that still has to get there, even if they implement it, one of the things that has to get there in order for there to be uptake is those ad tech companies, their entire business model, and the only way they make good is if they are able to tie PII and the results of an ad being viewed to an actual output, right? And by PII, I mean personally identifiable information, right? And so they need to understand who you are as a user, and they need to be able to tie your exposure to an ad to a purchase. One of the things that you're seeing in the articles that are coming out is pushback from Microsoft and PlayStation that there would be any transferal of user information, right, across these ads. That means they can enable the technology, and the developers might have interest in it, but unless the ad tech industry agrees to go with a business model where they are not provided that PII and that non-de-anonymized, I may not be saying that exactly right, data, that's not a big plus to the ad tech companies. And so
yeah, they're working on solving that issue because there's a lot of like Apple's pushing against that whole concept, and they seem like they're going to push harder against it in the future, and they see the writing on the wall where big platform holders that do hold this PII, that they're going to be less and less willing to play ball in the future. So there are many companies that are looking for ways to sort of skirt around that and sort of using analytics to figure out the PII from a sort of a roundabout manner. But you're right, that is still a gap that they need to cross, and they'll play. Gaming would probably not be the first place they would go to solve that issue. Like they are looking to do that with like television. I've talked to some of these companies that are trying to do this, like people who watch television ads. Like the television, yeah, sure, it's a smart TV, but that doesn't necessarily know we know exactly what you're watching on your cable box or whatever. And so it's like, how do we figure out if the ad that you put on TV is getting you to make a purchase? Well, we're working on solving that exact problem. We think we have the answer. So they're working in that direction, but yeah, it'll probably take some time before that filters down to games.
Yeah, one of the concerns too, I don't know if it was you brought this up, Slow-Mo, or if it was someone else in the BRAP chat, but someone mentioned having ads like what you have on YouTube, right? If where you're watching a video and then the ad pops up, right, and you have to kind of go through the ad or watch it, whatever. I go through this with my kids when they don't have YouTube accounts and they're watching, I don't know, some kind of cartoon or something on YouTube. That's not, are we going to see? We won't see anything like that, I don't think, right?
They be better than that, because that
no, I don't want to see that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a huge difference in dealing with that on YouTube, where it's like, it's a more passive thing, right? Like people, we were already hearing like how Netflix is like thinking about adding ads and for like a free option, and we see that with like other services that have a free option for watching TV and stuff like that. But that's a little more of a passive entertainment kind of interaction for a consumer, where I'm watching a video on YouTube, an ad pops up, cool, I don't really care for this ad, but if it gives me the option to skip it, I skip it so I can get back to actually watching the video. It's not that big a deal. I'll deal with it. When you're playing a video game, though, this is a more active way of dealing with entertainment. You're in the middle, or you're about to, say, start a mission, or you go into your menu to change something, and then because you hit your menu, an ad popped up before, and that's like that ad's like in front of your menu. You gotta get that out of the way. Like, that's annoying.
Yeah,
That goes
they probably wouldn't even start showing that stuff until you have already been hooked on the game, because they wouldn't want the
Right.
they wouldn't want that friction to stop the person in the onboarding process when it's so important that everything goes as smoothly as possible. So it's really just going to be a problem probably for people who are deep into the game and kind of can't stop themselves from playing, because they're whatever, their community is there, their friends are there, it's their hobby now. And it's like, so you're purposely going to make the game worse for like some of your most loyal players. Like maybe you take it away if someone monetizes, but still, like even if it's like a person who's playing a lot, they are adding value to your game, and your way of rewarding them is to offer a worse experience. I think they probably will try to find a more elegant solution than that.
Yeah. Well, interesting. I mean, this is all interesting, and I go ahead.
Well, we're still talking about free to play games, right?
Yeah.
For the most thing, and so I can definitely see an implementation where there is something like people who have signed up for the battle pass don't get presented the role kind of ads. People who haven't signed up for the battle pass, right, get when the screen is loading and you're on the battle bus or whatever, you get an ad that rolls in the upper right hand corner, right, not directly over the UI, but up in a corner of the UI that's presented that you have to watch while you're in that pre-action sequence.
Yeah, sounds right.
Yeah, I can see that happening.
Yeah, I also wonder too. We were discussing this in the BRAP DM. Like I wonder if like how our kids have growing up with. Somebody mentioned ads being tailored to you, like if based on what you search on Amazon. Like my Facebook page is like New Balance and Nike and just stuff that I look at or I bought or whatever, or that I've Google searched. If like at some point in their lives, if gaming is going to be like that, right? And maybe it's just I don't know. Maybe we're heading in that direction. I don't know.
I mean, I do think that there will be a time in the future where we look back at like kind of right now as a golden time of ads not being everywhere. I mean, I pay to not have ads on YouTube. I pay to not have ads on Hulu. I subscribe to all those other services that are movie and television services, and they don't have ads. And basically I've had kids for 5 years now, and they've grown up in a household that has had almost zero television ads. And it's like it's slowly finding ways to creep back into their lives, and it's like very noticeable to me now because we've been without it for so long.
Yeah,
and it's gonna be like I have a very low tolerance for it now. I find it very grating because I've found ways to eliminate it from my life. So if we get to a point where it's unavoidable again, or you have to pay an extreme fee to get rid of it, I'll be very annoyed. I will probably pay in some cases, not in all cases. In some cases, I will probably just stop using some of these services if they're going to try. Like Netflix, if Netflix is going to force ads onto me, I'm just out. I'm out.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about Netflix in a second, but I was thinking like just because like I'm thinking like the way like with social media, how kids are kind of conditioned now, where advertising maybe is not a big thing, right? Where and I think this is kind of what we were getting at in the BRAP DM, where like times are changing and we're getting older as gamers, and maybe the industry isn't going to be what we, were accustomed to growing up. I say growing up meaning us, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
maybe
on TikTok, what is it? It's your friends advertising to you, right? And your the people you follow, and they're like, and then the ads are just integrated into their content that they're making, and maybe it's probably already happening on Roblox, right? There's probably already Roblox things where people are getting paid to make stuff based on products, and I just don't know about it. So yeah, it's probably already happening.
Yeah. So
and I don't want to take away that.
Yep.
The whole that everything's negative, right, concerning it. One of the things that I wrote over the weekend, I wrote a very, I'll say vigorous,
very insightful, by the way, Game Logic. That was great.
Piece on Twitter about the fact that one of my experiences in video games is, in my background statistically, I shouldn't have wound up where I am, right? I shouldn't have wound up as an engineer and as a executive director at a business, right, and all this stuff. And I shouldn't have had all the experience I had because I grew up in the projects, right, single parent, disadvantaged, inner city school system that was not great, right? Shouldn't have made it into, the college that I made it into, and so on and so forth. And one of the reasons that happened is because of my interest in video games when I was a kid.
Absolutely.
Made me interested in technical subjects, made me curious, and made me pursue a path that enabled me to do that for a living. the fact of the matter is, it may very well be that putting ads in free-to-play games may be a way that more gamers are allowed to play games, right? We have this mentality, and I don't think it's deliberate, but I think it's one of the things that's true. You know, when I was a kid, the people who had the Atari 2600, right, and these video game console systems at the outset, they were not poor people. They were not poor kids, right? These are devices that are largely, for the most part, targeted at the middle class. And for people of a different socioeconomic status, right, normally you have to do things that are undesirable, like extend yourself into debt, right, to get your hands on these devices. Once you have them, then you still have to buy games for them. And so for a lot of families, right, even in Western worlds, they can obtain a console, but they don't necessarily have, right, the parents who can fuel that entertainment interest. And so if, you know, putting ads in a game is a way for kids who are, you know, on the disadvantaged sides of the track to get access to games, then maybe that's not entirely a bad thing, because maybe it makes them curious. It makes them go down those paths as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, Game Logic, and that's why, you know, I really enjoyed what you said, because I think addresses some of the things that I think we see with the conversation around maybe gatekeeping in gaming, right? You know, that gaming is an expensive hobby, and if you can't pay for it, you shouldn't be gaming, things like that.
Yeah, that's awful, because, I mean, Game Logic is right. Having a hobby is the key to getting out of, or it is one of the keys to getting out of situations in your life. There's research from like 2015, I think, where people looked at what's the people who got out of poverty have in common? They have a passion. They have hobbies. They have things that gave them purpose. And gaming is a completely viable option there. I mean, it absolutely was for me. I would be, you know, not there's anything wrong with that. But I'd be digging ditches. I'd be working manual labor if you know, and I'd be happily doing it. But if I didn't have this passion, I probably would be in that situation instead. And so it's like, okay, having this purpose, giving me sort of a way to rally my life around this bright center point that I care about is super valuable. And if free-to-play gaming enables someone to have access to that, and what it takes to fund that is ads, we should be hesitant about turning up our noses at it.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things I wrote on the extension of that piece was the fact that, you know, it's a little, I feel, disingenuous, maybe just outright hypocritical, that I see a lot of people who can afford to play video games who will break out the torches and pitchforks and radicalize the mob and try and get them to push back on the notion of some of these things, as well as a lot of the other monetization paths in gaming. But then those very same people will say, but don't increase my game cost by $10, right?
This is what I was saying earlier about who's the real enemy in the room here. It's the system overarching all of this stuff. Right. It's the fact that you know, you're so worried about your entertainment budget and about the way things that the way these companies are spending money in other way, because you have your own anxieties about not having health care and stuff about this. So you get all worked up about how every dollar's being spent in all these other situations. Like, there is a real culprit out there, and it's probably not a company that's trying to maximize this bottom line because it legally is obligated to do so. That's just a symptom.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. So since we're talking about like ads and everything, I do want to, unless Slomo, unless you want to chime in with something before we wrap up this topic.
No, go ahead.
All right. So with Netflix, so we're talking about, you know, ads, you know, having ads. Netflix has been one of those services that really hasn't had ads. And I know that Netflix isn't really necessarily game related per se, although they are working on some game related things.
Yeah, they're getting into games. It's
one
of their avenues to success in the future.
Yeah, who they bought a developer recently, didn't they?
Yeah, we reported
was
on
it?
that. I can't remember. Let me look it up.
Yeah, I can't remember, but
Netflix acquires game studio. Let me see.
And if it was a well-known game studio, if I'm not.
Boss Fight. They bought Boss Fight, which has made a couple of games. What did they do? It was formed by former Zynga and Ensemble people. They did like Dungeon Dungeon Master and a bunch of other mobile games and stuff like that. They've acquired some other ones though. This was the most recent one.
Yeah, there was another one. I feel like it's probably a little bit more of a, not necessarily a household name, but probably a little more well known. God, I can't remember who it is, but anyhow, so Netflix has they've had a net loss of 200,000 subscribers. I think their shares sank like 35%, right?
I think it's dropped even more since then.
Has it dropped more? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm reading the AP. AP broke. AP has. They say they broke the story, but I'm reading the AP article that came out a couple hours ago. So yeah, it's actually I think this morning is when this article came out. So yeah, you may be right, Jeff. It's probably even fell more 35%. Wow. But so 200,000 subscribers. Obviously, that's kind of rattled investors. Netflix historically, I think, has always had some issues, or has had some issues. I think with profitability. They've had a fun projects. I think for a long time, if I'm not mistaken, I think they were borrowing a lot of money. I think to fund projects, right? Isn't that kind of what their model was for quite some time, to borrow money from investors to make content?
Yes. So yeah, the thing about Netflix is like it's not like a Microsoft. It is the thing that Microsoft is worried about in the game subscription space. This upstart that can borrow money up relatively cheaply and build up something over time. It's Amazon. Jeff Bezos borrowed a bunch of money from his friends and family, and then borrowed money from major investment firms and stuff like that. It didn't make money for a very long time. And the idea is you build up a big enough user base, and then at a certain point, once you're the master of this domain, you squeeze them for all they're worth. And the problem for Netflix is they are turning the screws at probably the worst opportune time because you look around, you see Disney, you see HBO Max finally get its legs under itself. I'll let you go here, BRAP.
Yeah, no, I was about to say that, Jeff. I think the other obviously the issue is losing 200,000 subscribers, and they're estimating about 100 million households worldwide are using their service for free, meaning that they have access to someone's account via password and everything, login information.
There is a little bit of context on the 200,000 loss. They lost 700,000 subscribers by pulling out of Russia.
They did. Yeah.
So there's like, okay, they probably wouldn't have lost subscribers if it wasn't for that, but they are still trending down, and even still, it just never looks good when you are losing subscribers. A lot of investors actually don't look that deeply into the context; they just look at the numbers and then they react wildly. Yep. So that's definitely what's happening here for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But that's so the thing I wanted to mention that, like, it's interesting because Disney's come out, HBO Max has come out, and I'll tie this into gaming because people talk about Sony and can Sony compete with Game Pass, and they don't do anything like Microsoft does or Doom, but I'll tie this all into gaming. I promise. But yeah, you're right. Like HBO Max, Disney. I think Disney's done a better job marketing their content than Netflix has, in my opinion. I feel like I see more Disney stuff, and even on social media. Again, this is anecdotal, but I feel like there's more buzz around what Disney. What's Disney service? Is it Disney Plus? Why am I
Disney Plus?
Thank you. I'm drawing a blank here. I should know this because my kids love Disney Plus. I love Disney Plus too. Like, and Disney has those. They have Marvel, right? They took Marvel away from Netflix, right? They got content.
They spent like $36 billion on Fox to have all that. They have The Simpsons and Die Hard and stuff. So like they went out and spent a lot of money specifically for Disney Plus. So yeah, they have a lot of content to compete against in a way that Netflix simply cannot.
Yep. And content is king. And HBO Max, we know HBO's pedigree, and now they have their streaming service. It seems like their streaming service is getting legs. So there's a lot of competition now in the subscription space, which I don't think is helping Netflix. And then there's the issue of, the price increase. I've seen some people say I'm not okay with the price increase. I'm going to continue subscribing to Netflix because my kids watch it. But also, my Netflix subscription is being subsidized by Comcast right now, or Xfinity, or whatever it's called. I think I pay extra for the 4K package, which Xfinity doesn't really. They don't subsidize that. Plus, I also get Netflix on T-Mobile's dime too. So Netflix does have some deals. There's kind of ways you can kind of get Netflix a little bit cheaper if you're using Xfinity or if you're signing up to T-Mobile. I don't know if any other mobile providers are subsidized or offering Netflix as an incentive to sign up with them. But yeah, I mean, so there's price increases. They are looking at. So this is interesting. They are looking at allowing people to use someone else's subscription or login information at like $3 additional a month or something. I think it is. And then they're also looking at a tier where there is advertisements that are going to be in Netflix. So very much like when you're watching a show, then you have to, you'll go through these ads, but that's going to be part of another tier. And now we get to a situation, I think you mentioned this, Jeff, like you as a consumer may not want to pay into a higher tier to avoid advertisements, but that's kind of what Netflix is doing. But look, this is good. I think it's going to be interesting. I think how this thing kind of plays out for Netflix, I think long term, especially with the amount of competition now with Disney Plus. I mean, I think Disney is. I'm not going to say they're going to knock Netflix off the pedestal, but they could with their content, right?
I mean, I think see right now, like what does Netflix have right now? Like it's content. It really is like what the driving force to everything, because Netflix at one point was like you got to have Netflix. And then that was due to what Netflix provided. Like they had shows, original content shows that people couldn't do.
Stranger Things,
House of Cards,
Friends, right?
Casey's
House of Cards,
scandals, and stuff like that. Like they had shows.
Tiger King.
Yeah. Freaking Tiger King. That was like the thing. What was all of these South Korean?
Squid Game,
really good. Squid Game was the most watched thing.
Is like still actually bigger than any show on Disney Plus has ever been, and stuff like that. Like that Netflix can still do massive global hits, and I think that is that should be part of their strategy, is that global strategy. And like as big as Disney Plus is, a lot of their Marvel is a global appealing thing. But the Marvel shows have been very hit and miss. I mean, when Netflix is putting a Korean show on there, these are like globally like breakout hits that appeal to everybody because they are just so well made. And that's a slightly different strategy. So Netflix can still compete in some ways, but I think when you're talking about growing, like Netflix is already so huge, it already has so many millions of subscribers. Every new subscriber is that much more challenging. And that is where that content that you're talking about, Slow-Mo, really does make a difference. And at a certain point, I think Netflix has just hit a wall with being able to pull that stuff out. Like they will be able to keep having like the cheap reality TV shows that surprise people and stuff out of Korea and stuff. I think they're really good at with their analytics of spotting shows that can like hit above their weight. But
it almost seems like they just approve anything.
Yeah, like there's definitely some of that as well, for sure.
Yeah, because I know I have watched like the same TV show on Netflix like 3 times, but they got different names with different actors. It's just like,
oh yes, yes.
Like, is this Lord of the Flies again with like a different setting with different like? Why do y'all keep doing the same show?
Watch Flies of the Lord on Netflix.
Because you watch it 3 times, they know
exactly. That's why it keeps popping up on my feed. It's like, hey, Slow-Mo, you watched something like this already. We canceled it because only you watched it, but we got another one for you. It's just like, come on. But like they approve so much stuff. Like I don't even think they knew how big Squid Game was going to be until the entire world was watching Squid Game. And it's just now I gotta watch the next, South Korean show. There was Alice in Borderland, and there was, I can't remember the other one.
A Train to Busan or something, yeah.
Well, Train to Busan is a excellent movie that came out years ago, but that was
but it started blowing up again because of that. Yeah,
right. And there's another one, something home. It's like people turning into monsters, and I don't know. Look, it's great. Stuff's great, but it's like they've tapped into.
There's that zombie one they had too.
This talented region where the world wasn't seeing all these great shows, but now they have the avenue to bring it out there, and it's only on Netflix, which is going to be for them the incentive to get people to sign up and stay sub to Netflix. Because what has been happening is that you get stuff like, well, the next season, the final season of Stranger Things is about to show up, and people resub to Netflix to watch the final season, and then they unsub. Because now I've watched the only thing I wanted to watch that you have right now, and now I'm gonna go off another sub and do something else. What they want you to do is stay subbed. Period. Mm-hmm. And so, but they're gonna have to keep coming up with more content in order to do that. And
the cadence,
it's gotta be more than Stranger Things. It's gotta be more than Squid Game. It's gotta be more than what they're providing. And I think as of now, I don't think they really had much of anything in the year 2022 that's been like, hey, you got to sub to Netflix for this. And so that might be kind of, also, driving some of the, people just like, oh, well, if I can't keep using my ex-girlfriend's Netflix subscription, I can just go without it for a little while,
Well,
Well,
I think we should put some of these things in context, right? So the fact of the matter is that all of the streaming services were down this quarter, not just Netflix. We should also mention that one of the dynamics of the stock market is that obviously any stock that has a growth story to tell is always going to come off looking better, and the behemoths are always going to come out looking worse because you're at the top. There isn't much other story to tell other than the start of your slide downhill. I think the fact of the matter also is that Netflix stock has been significantly overvalued, right? That was a $350 stock when most of the other streaming services stocks at best are in the $100 range, and many of them are even lower. So
God,
from the
didn't get it to like $500 like before this big drop. So yeah,
right. So
insane.
So from the Wall Street Journal, right? Paramount Global was down 8.6%. Their stocks at $33.16. Warner Brothers was down 6%. Their stock valued at $23.01. Walt Disney down 5.6%. Their stock at $124.57, and Spotify down 11% to $122.49. So everybody was down. Netflix had the most to lose. So I think that's part of the story. I mean, one of the things that will continue to challenge Netflix is, just like I said, they're at the top. They have the largest number of users. They are the incumbent, right? That's going to be challenged by everyone else. So is a Netflix stock bad because of what's happened? I don't think so, right? In fact, they saw their largest trading volume right on the day of this loss. There are tons of options calls out there where people are tilted at various, waiting for the stock to fall in various directions, right? People who are going to sell or buy when the stock goes up or down. And so I don't think it's a unilaterally bad story. I just think it's a particular story around which people have to make decisions, and I'm sure. And the other thing is, as you're about to tie this to the gaming story, BRAP, this is also part of the dynamic of the pandemic, right?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Pandemic and lockdown went into effect. All of these entertainment-oriented services that were, prime things to participate in when you're on lockdown shot through the roof, right? Quite frankly, in terms
Tiger
of their
King.
and now we're right, and now we're seeing where we're about to start down on the backward slide of that.
Yeah, but I think gaming's going to be more resilient with that than these video services, though. And maybe that's probably wrongheaded, but it does seem like we were expecting that those dips to happen, and gaming's mostly maintained its momentum out of the pandemic. So it'll be interesting to see. I guess we're gonna get results from these gaming companies in the next few weeks, and we're gonna get NPD next week. So we'll see.
Yeah. So Grub, I this is a question directed at you because you've listened to us on Crossfire talk a lot about Game Pass. And obviously, this Netflix news happens, and obviously people are parlaying this or comparing this to Game Pass.
Just a wild thing to do.
Yeah,
it's a wild thing to do.
I mean, is there anything? I mean, should people be comparing this to Game Pass? Some people I've seen, and I don't agree with that, but some people have said, "Oh, yeah, this is proof that Netflix, they're struggling, and maybe the Game Pass model isn't going to necessarily work because look at Netflix."
So yeah, the analog here for this is clearly not Netflix. It's I mean, as much as there is an analog here, if there is one at all, it would be Disney. Like, what is the company going out and spending billions of dollars to acquire content to make sure that its subscription service has the content it needs to grow? Well, Disney was doing that. They spent that $30 whatever billion on Fox. Microsoft spending $69 billion on Call of Duty, a thing that will make money both in its subscription service and as a standalone product. These are things that Microsoft is playing a much different game than what Netflix was doing. Netflix was borrowing money to try to build up a subscriber base and then figure out a way to really turn a profit later in its life. It will struggle to do that now, but it probably still will figure that out. But it will struggle to do that for quite some time. Microsoft is already a very profitable company, a very, very profitable company. And so building up this user base, like, it can fund that itself, and it clearly is. That's the whole idea here, is that it can fund this growth itself and this expansion itself, and if that requires going out and making massive purchases, the biggest purchases in the history of United States, then so be it. They could do that. They can afford to do that, and that is Netflix never had that option. That was never on the table for them. Netflix always had to be nimbler and smaller and more responsive, and Microsoft is trying to do that stuff. Like, to their credit, they are trying to be pretty nimble with Game Pass and make sure that it could be what it needs to be for whatever developer that comes to them and wants to make a deal. Like, they are doing that stuff, but clearly we can all see it. The big move here is to get stuff like Call of Duty and all the stuff from Bethesda and the next big game from Todd Howard into Game Pass, and that's going to be what's going to move the needle. And we haven't seen the results of that yet. It's been a long process because of ongoing contracts, but it's still very different than what Netflix is doing.
Yeah, no, that's and so then the other thing too is with the announcement of Spartacus or whatever it is, PlayStation Plus now, which combines PlayStation Plus, PlayStation Now. The other side of the coin is, well, can Sony compete? Do they have to do things like day and date, like Microsoft's doing with their first party? And some people have made the kind of have said, okay, like Sony is kind of like HBO in this regard. They're like, they have the content, right? We know about HBO's pedigree with their shows that they've done, like Game of Thrones, and there's a bunch of others, but that they can kind of pivot when they need to and kind of turn on the on switch because they have the content to do so, right? And content is quote unquote king. Do you guys think that's even a fair comparison to compare Sony to like an HBO Max, where if they had to, they could do it because they have the content to pivot?
No, I would say no, because in the last year, HBO Max had all of WB's movies going into HBO Max, and although that was cool, the majority of them were terrible, and so I would say the quality,
some bad ones.
There was some bad, some bad stuff.
Although they got the Batman.
Yeah, they do have the Bat, but the Batman wasn't day and date. That was more like 90 days later, I think, right? Which is fine. But like Sony's not doing that with their sub services. Mm-hmm. There's no mandate or even any timed delay to their first party games going into their sub services. But I will also say the quality of Sony's first party games, if they did go in, would have definitely been at a higher level of quality in comparison to what WB put into HBO Max. I'm talking about like that Mortal Kombat movie, Wonder Woman 1984. I mean, like that stuff was bad. Like, it's like I was happy I didn't have to watch. I didn't spend any money.
I would have been so bummed. I never finished 1984 because I was so like, this is actually. I think this movie's repulsive. Actually, I don't.
The movie was so bad.
Vibes from it.
It was very bad,
and it also seeing that in the theater.
It also kind of, has some unanswered questions. It's kind of like, yo, is Wonder Woman kind of taking advantage of this poor man? Let me not get into it. Anyway, look, it's just, I would say it's not good in comparison. Huh?
She was.
Oh, yeah, absolutely she was, right? It's just uncomfortable to even think about. But no, I don't know who
oh my God, I never even thought of it like that till now, slow-mo.
Yeah, that was the first thing I thought about as I was watching the movie. I was like, "Wait a minute!
Oh boy,
he just took over this guy's body, and they just like rolling around having like, what about the?"
It's amazing that they didn't have like an answer for that. Like they didn't have whatever. It's a bad movie. It's a terrible movie. Anyway, I don't think there is an equivalent to just straight up TV/movie streaming services for Sony and what Sony's doing right now. I think they're kind of like in a holding pattern. What we saw them changing PS Plus and transitioning PS Now into PS Plus was more of them really trying to deal with the fact that PS Now was not a winner for them. It over the course of X amount of years, I think the last reported number was like 3 million. Out of like the 100+ million PlayStation 4 install base, you could only get 3 million to sub to that. That's like sub EA Play numbers. Like EA,
right?
I mean, that's a streaming service, but that's less than EA Play.
Yeah, way less than EA Play, and it's just like at that point they like I would look at it if I was Sony. I have
Be careful what you say,
invested
Slow-Mo.
into-
They-
but I've
they-
invested.
They will come for you.
They can come for me. Kiss my ass. Anyway, if I'm Sony, I've invested into cloud with Gaikai. I've invested into services and actually have hired people who work in departments that maintain specific things that aren't being used. Why don't I then just complete dismantle PS Now? Because clearly, even and this happens all the time when you have a brand. If people look at a brand as a loser, they don't pay attention to it anymore. So it didn't matter that they dropped the price. People didn't realize that. It didn't matter that they started adding games that you could download. People still called it a trash streaming service, even though there were a significant number of games that you could download. All the changes that they made to try to make it more attractive to gamers just got ignored because people weren't going to check for it. As soon as they heard, hey, PS Now is click, their mind is somewhere else because they don't care about PS Now. Now you take all of that, what that was, and then you incorporate that into PS Plus. Now there are people who are already sub to PS Plus, and if you, like me, you got an email saying, hey, you had this, it's now being transitioned into that. And now there may be people that may like, oh, like I didn't realize that I could actually play X game from PS2. I can play games from Vita. These are like options that people may have actually indulged in if they knew it was available, if they paid attention to it. So it's that's what I think that move was for. I don't think they are at the point where they really want to even attempt to kind of go down this route yet. If they did, I think they probably would have made their announcement of the changes that they made and then said, hey, like all of our first party games will show up at say PS Plus Extra in a year, right? Or something like that. Like it's a guaranteed a year it's going to be in there. Then you can kind of see it like, okay, you're really kind of pushing this service to be a competitor for Game Pass. But until then, it's just more like, let's actually try to get some use out of what we already have established and invested in.
Yeah.
Going back to the Microsoft conversation, when Grubb mentioned or did the comparison of Game Pass to Disney, I wasn't going to go with you on that, but the one thing I will say where I do concur with that is one of the things that's been frustrating me about the Game Pass conversation is it's always a conversation, when people are trying to do a takeaway from Game Pass about Game Pass and even about Xbox. And I'm like, it's really not a Game Pass or Xbox conversation in terms of the P&L and the constraints. It's really a Microsoft conversation. And so, Brad, as I'm going through this thread you and I were talking about earlier today, I'm cherry picking things that more and more I disagree with, right? Which is the comparison of the subscription model of Game Pass to single game subscriptions like for MMOs, which I just think is a wild chasm to make a comparison to. But then also there's this whole notation of like loading costs into Game Pass by acquisitions, and I'm like, from an M&A perspective and a P&L perspective, I'm almost absolutely certain that the debit for the cost of the Activision acquisition is not layered onto Game Pass. I don't think Game Pass is necessarily even a P&L center of its own. I wouldn't expect that to be within a corporate structure. So, I think some of the comparisons are kind of way off, mostly in an effort to kind of map the negative narrative to the reality, which they don't match up to.
Yeah, I mean, the Microsoft does not look at Game Pass in a silo. It's not. It is never looking at Game Pass in a vacuum. It wants Game Pass to grow, but if you ask them where they make most of their money from, they will happily tell you it's from selling those video games and in the store, which is why they continue to sell those video games in the store. And they're also on Game Pass day and date. That's fine. If that's the way you want to do it, please. They're going to be happy to serve that up to you because they believe they will create a more loyal customer long term that serves their service needs and their service business model that has worked for them so well in all of their other verticals. But they look at Xbox as a whole, and as a whole, these things continue to sell very well. And if the shift from selling these games being the main driver to subscribing to these games being the main driver is very slow and gradual, they're fine with that. That's the point. They want that slow ramp up of growth that is going to encourage people to stay with this subscription service over a long period over time. The comparison to Disney Plus is exclusively about the angle at which these companies are coming at the problem, and where Netflix was like slowly like being a disruptor from the very beginning. Microsoft is kind of a disruptor, but mostly we are going to just use our money, throw that around, acquire, and pretend like there was already someone in the space that we're trying to push out, so that we can actually keep anyone like a Netflix out of this space, so that we can just own it. That's the only comparison there.
Yeah, and I think those comparisons line up well. Again, just like you mentioned, right? It's not a single revenue stream that is the point of the conversation, which I feel like when people are going after Game Pass, that's kind of what they tee up on, is they talk about Game Pass as if it's the only way that money is coming in to the Xbox division, and that really just doesn't make sense. And the comparison to Disney also makes sense in terms of it's a corporate play, right? Microsoft is making money, and what they're looking at is, the games division. They're also an enterprise corporate entity, and so I keep talking about what the Azure play is in this, what the cloud play is in this, what the play is for all of these other services and products that they offer, and how those things kind of check and balance each other, and how they kind of balance out overall. That it's not just the company can choose to spend money. I mean, Amazon was in existence for 7 years before the first time that it ever turned a profit. And the first year was profitable. It turned a profit of 1 cent per share. Right? Yeah. So it's a.
And it didn't matter the entire time. What was the share doing? The share prices were going up and up and up and up that entire time, because everyone could see the growth. The growth was there. That's what people cared about, and that's what mattered.
Yep.
Yeah, it's great points, by the way. It's a fascinating conversation, I think, to have. I'm still like I disagree. Big shout out to my good buddy OBM, where I think he thinks this is the future of gaming, and I'm kind of like, no, I think this is going to be in addition to gaming. But it's a fascinating conversation. One, because it's new, and I think two, because it's Microsoft, and I think everything Microsoft does, and like Sony to an extent, is under the microscope. But again, I mean, it's going to be. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Game Pass kind of plays out in the future. I do remember, hearing similar things to Xbox Live, and by the way, I was an Xbox Live beta tester 20 something years ago when they were like, yeah, right. When people were saying, hey, you know what, like who's going to want to pay to talk to your friends? I mean, that was literally the argument, right? Why would I pay? I could pick up the phone, and so any.
I mean, it's also like people. Yeah, are there enough people in the world to subscribe to something like Game Pass? The gaming's a little bit different than video, and I think I talked about this on Crossfire a little bit, but like. A gamer is worth a little bit more lifetime value, because we spend money on the games, or we spend money on the subscription service, sure. But if anything has in-game purchases, we will spend money on those as well. And those can sort of have no ceiling. So your lifetime value can balloon very quickly, and movies just can't do that. Spotify just has no way of doing that.
That's a great
point.
So
it's a completely different business model. You don't need quite as many people to make it work. And also, we're kind of already paying a relatively high price for Game Pass Ultimate, and it's continuing to grow, even though $15 a month already. And so that's a pretty high number, where if you get, if they get to 30 million here pretty quickly, and if the average price is somewhere around like, $9 per month, once you factor in all the discounts people are getting, and all the pricing globally and stuff like that, that's still quite a lot of money they're bringing in each month. And they will probably be able to figure out a way to fund their games just through that. And that's 30 million. And this is before we're talking about getting Starfield. This is before we're talking about getting Call of Duty and Game Pass. So the 50 million number should be well within their range. And 50 million gamers subscribed to your service is a number you could do a lot of damage with. You could make a lot of money from that many people tuning in each month for your stuff.
Yeah, but Jeff, did you think like some of the challenges, and again, I often wonder if some of the challenges too with Game Pass is kind of like with Netflix, like what they call the churn, or where I think that's the term they use, like where you're gonna have people kind of dipping in and out of the service, right? How does Microsoft like I think cadence is kind of like one of the things, and again, I've heard some developers at Microsoft say the concern is cadence. Can we keep up with the cadence to make this thing work? And I think Game Logic, you and I kind of were talking about that on DM. How does that going to play out? Like, are they going to be able to do that, or are they going to be able to keep people engaged? Is what I'm saying. Like, are they going to have enough there in terms of cadence? Because I'm one of those individuals right now. Like, I haven't used Game Pass since Halo Infinite. Now, if Microsoft was, and I'm different than every consumer. I'm not saying everyone thinks like me, but like I'm that person who hasn't used Game Pass. Now I'm still subscribed because I subscribe thinking like, okay, they've made all these acquisitions. I subscribe for the future of Game Pass, and I kind of have my regrets. That's another conversation. But like, can they keep that cadence up though with all these studios? And then what about quality? I mean, is quality going to be impacted by that pressure to put content out to keep people engaged in the service like this?
I mean, if quality dips, they're going to pay for it. Like that, it's as simple as that. Gamers are very sensitive to the quality of their games, and if the quality dips, if it doesn't improve, if it's like the Xbox One era of Microsoft first-party studios, they're going to pay for it, and they won't grow. And it's as simple as that. So they can make that decision. They can make those cuts if they want, and they'll pay for it. I don't think it's any more complicated than that. I think with the people churning in and out and be able to meet that cadence of release, like they haven't been able to do it so far. They've always said, just wait. I think it does seem like it's coming. They have a lot of studios. A lot of the studios they acquired over since 2018, many of them have all their contracts off the book with like PlayStation for for exclusives and stuff like that. So pretty soon we're going to get to a point where a game a quarter doesn't seem all that absurd at all. And really, a game every 2 months by 2025 should be where they're at. I think that seems to be well within their reach. And now making games is hard. It's a difficult thing, and things are always going to move around. And there probably will be gaps of 4 months or even 6 months here and there. And people will let them know, and they'll be met. And if you want, unsubscribe at that point. But the reason numbers keep going up for most of these things is because most people are happy to let momentum carry them forward. And if something's coming 4 months from now, if you remember right away to cancel, maybe you'll cancel and then you'll resubscribe. But if you wait a month, it's like, well, okay, it's just a couple more months, or I guess I'll just get to it next week. I already let it go this long. Maybe, I'll cancel it later this month when it's closer to the renewal date. And you just keep forgetting. I mean, that's the whole point of this. This is the whole reason they want this, is because humans, the human brain runs on 15 watts of power or something like that. We take shortcuts in every aspect of our life. Our brain just makes up stuff in our heads so that we don't have to actually think that hard. And so anytime that you are faced with a thing where it's like, I got to go do something to cancel something, most of the time people choose to just do the lazy thing and continue into
the old gym membership. I'll get to the gym one day.
Yep. And I think a lot of that is the focused on first party titles, right? But it's not just first party titles, right? It's third party publishers. It's making deals like EA Play. Like, it would probably be very good if Microsoft, added one other type of kind of subordinate child service into the Game Pass mix like that. The other thing that we haven't incorporated is we haven't incorporated the discussion of mobile, and we're kind of waiting to see where that play goes. The Activision acquisition, if it goes through, will include King Digital Games, which got just under, I think, $3 billion last year. And that's the part of their service that could extend the reach into a lot of these other countries where the socioeconomic demographic and status could allow people. And we saw also that I think Xbox has dropped the price of the Game Pass subscription service in India. And so there are plays there that can be made to onboard these additional, some subset of the 2 billion gamers who can't surmount the hardware purchase entry price that, Satya and Phil have talked about, who could be attracted to come into the service via a mobile device because of the addition of something like King Digital. And so that's a possible thing. The other thing I'd throw out just as a hypothesis is, getting something like, a Gears sequel, or when Halo shows up or Forza shows up, is a great get when you're a Game Pass subscriber. But I also am very curious. It feels like there's also a sweet spot of the type of game where it doesn't necessarily have to be a AAA blockbuster tier 1 title. The addition of something like Guardians of the Galaxy into the Game Pass service is a sweet get, because it's the type of game that runs the risk of not getting a ton of uptake out as a standalone purchase because gamers don't pay attention to it.
It didn't. It had really atrocious sales for what it should have had. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so getting those games, and I'll just put it in Metacritic terms, like getting those games that are in that 75 to 85 band, I think are great moves. Not only for Microsoft, but probably help the developer out as well if they're getting a flat fee for sales that they didn't realize or wouldn't have realized otherwise.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a great point. I do want to pivot here real quick because we have Forte here, and Forte God of War is coming.
I gotta leave. Never mind. I'm out of here. F this. I can't be on a show with Forte.
Interesting.
Forte,
you get a one-word response.
Forte, God of War Ragnarok is happening. It's happening 2022. Actually, if you saw that tweet, there's an animation developer or something at Sony Santa Monica said that the game is coming 2022 of this year. Jeff, have you heard anything about God of War when we might see more of it? Or maybe if in fact it is coming? I mean, again, I think it's been confirmed, but have you heard anything on your end?
I think if they were going to delay it till 2023, today's the day they would have told us that, right? I mean, we just came off the Zelda getting the exact same thing, only they did delay it. So now would have been the time. It's getting pretty late in the year. So I do expect them to try. I think what just happened here is almost exactly what Cory Barlog said, is everyone's actually just working on making the game. We didn't take them off to go make an asset that we could show you yet. We will do that. But everyone's sort of busy right now. That totally checks that like meets my sort of check for like, okay, does that sound right? That does sound right for the way the game making is working right now at the moment. I think it comes out this year. Yeah, I think we hear about it over the summer, and I think a big part of that also is just PlayStation maybe lining up a lot of other stuff to come in after that game and making sure they're ready to announce that stuff as well. Because once you get God of War's date, it starts looking like, okay, that's awesome, and everyone's going to show up to buy that game. Yeah, but what else is coming? Because PlayStation, that's the next big game, and there's not much after that. And so they have a ton of stuff in the works, but they're just sort of figuring out when they're going to tell us about that. And I do wonder, like, they've done their PlayStation Showcase, not their PlayStation State of Play, in like early fall, right? Late summer. That's kind of the time they've been doing it. I wonder if they move that up closer to that June timeframe this year. Just so they can really showcase all that stuff in one go. Those PlayStation showcases have been very successful, so I wonder if they'll go for that again. And that's where we'll really get the date for this.
Yeah, Jeff, do you think the date's going to be like September? Because I feel like they aren't putting their games, their big titles, like in that November December timeframe. You think it's going to be like September, October-ish?
I still think but past this prologue, but it's not like necessarily like a repeating pattern. They might have a December or a November release this year, and it could be God of War, but still my gut tells me that you're probably right. It's probably September-ish. September is actually not that, like, we're like 5 months away, so that's not too long from now at all. So maybe that's a bit aggressive. But still, in my heart, it feels like it leans towards that more than November. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's a November release.
Interesting. Okay.
But definitely coming out this year. You hear that, Forte?
Yeah, Forte was adamant, Jeff, that this game was not going to come out 2022.
I'm at 50% right now, brother.
Before today, I was definitely leaning that way as well. But the way you talked about it, I'm like, yeah, I buy it.
Man, 50%, man. Still at 50%. We'll see. I mean,
it was just confirmed.
Listen,
animation director or developer.
Sounds good.
From Sony Santa Monica tweeted out, said it's coming 2022.
So we should listen to Forte.
No,
we should listen to Forte.
That works for
Forte. Listen, you don't have to listen to me at all. I just gave you an opinion on what I thought. That's all.
Oh no, you did more than that, sir. You were like, it's definitely.
What did I say? 50 times over. I said, listen.
No. Let's go back to.
Go ahead, get your bars.
As soon as Breath of the Wild 2 got delayed,
you're taking content away from BPS tomorrow, sir. While you're doing this, arguing with me. But go ahead.
No. We can. You think I'm not going to rehash this again tomorrow? Are you crazy? No. You, sir, said I told you guys, and God of War's gonna get
I
delayed.
said
And
50%, baby.
no, all right, you know what? It's hilarious because
50%.
when they hit us with the release date,
I know.
I'm gonna send you another
I'm
tweet.
gonna
But
bask
of
in
all,
glory.
but of all the games that I mentioned, the one thing that I did say about God of War was, and it was hedging like a mug because you never know. I said Zelda definitely wasn't coming out this year, and I was correct. God of War, I kept saying, who knows? I said, maybe it's a chance, but I said it's a good chance it's not going to come. I said it's not going to come, but I said I will not be mad if it does come because I want the game to come out this year just because of the situation and them not talking about it and them not releasing games after September. In my opinion, that game wasn't coming out this year. But I said 100 times over, if they announce it before this summer, it will probably come out this year. But if it makes it past June in July, it's not coming out this year because guess what?
A few
They're
weeks
not
ago, you
releasing a
told me it
game.
was already too late.
No,
You
I
told
didn't.
me yes, you
No, I
did.
didn't. You better go
A few
back
weeks
and
ago,
look.
you already
All
told
right,
me it
I'm
was
gonna need
too
you.
late, and they should have announced it already.
Prove it. Prove it.
My
All
God.
right.
Prove it.
I will let. Hey,
Yep, prove it. I'm
tune
looking
in
forward.
tomorrow.
I'm looking forward to this audio clip of me telling you that if they don't announce it by July, it's still not coming out this year.
You told me it was already too late.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did.
Find it.
Oh my
all I
God.
gotta say.
All right. Wait.
Find it. It's fine though, but guess what? 50%, baby. It's fine. And if it does come out this year, great. I get to play God of War Ragnarok this year, and I get to leave Destiny alone for about 2 months until I beat it again. Great.
I'm also curious, Jeff. You said something about other Sony games or something later this year. Like they got to announce some other stuff.
Yeah, I mean they think it's
like what else do they have? I guess in the pipeline
they
that could come out this
blow
year.
That whole wad this year, ain't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they have been holding back, and I think they were definitely affected by the pandemic like everyone else. And I think they are probably in a position now to launch a bunch of stuff. I don't know what exactly would come out this year, but there's definitely I mean, I think the Last of Us remaster is probably going to be coming.
What about Factions?
I think Factions probably comes alongside that. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's going to be like a lot of stuff along those lines. And,
oh my God, Jeff, there's no more calendar left though. Almost.
I mean, what does PlayStation have first party that can, like, other than God of War, right? I mean, they'll put out God of War and then they'll have months around that they can fill in with other stuff. I still think, I mean, there's not much time left to announce this stuff, but they've been holding off. So I mean, I've heard the Last of Us remaster or remake, whatever it is coming this year, but I guess we'll see.
Well, I believe that's coming this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. That wouldn't surprise me one bit. Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting.
I mean,
go ahead.
Do we think that they're going to do things to crowd Forspoken out of the conversation, though?
Interesting. Good bring up.
I mean, I don't know if it's like, I don't know if they would look at it that way. Forspoken, what is Forspoken's new release date? They said August?
October.
Yeah, I mean, Forspoken would not. I mean, The Last of Us remake sounds like a December kind of thing to me. You put that out in December. You put out Factions, maybe. You could put Factions out in October or something like that alongside Forspoken. That wouldn't affect it too much. I don't know, but you're right. Like Forspoken's definitely one of those games that is exclusive that they would rely on. But they're going to have more games to announce. A lot of those games will be 2023 games, but they're probably going to have more games for the rest of this year.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Like, what of all these games that's going to get announced, what's going to be 2022?
Well, I think the swirl of it is, and to me, why it's very hard to predict is, this, and I mean, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but this holiday season, the PS5 will now have been on the market for 2 full years, right? 3 holiday seasons.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we have what I think is buzz, and my understanding is that, one of the things Jim Ryan wants is he wants a slightly increased release cadence so that there's more total marquee titles out per console generation, right? From the top tier studios, Naughty Dog, Sucker Punch, Insomniac, and what's the one that I'm missing?
Sucker Punch?
Sucker Punch.
I thought I said Sucker Punch.
No, I thought you said Sucker Punch too. Yeah.
Gorilla?
Yeah, what's that?
Gorilla.
Yes, yeah, I'll throw Gorilla in there. So out of those top tier studios, that he wants more titles per console generation. And so part of me says, and then part of me also looks at the history, which is basically that, Sony doesn't always necessarily play big in the holiday season. They, a lot of times they kind of lay back and let the third party publishers kind of get their big hits in during that time frame. So all those things kind of congeal in a mass world that makes it very difficult to me to predict. But it runs up against, because as I was initially looking at it, I was like, well, I would think that maybe they would wait and for God of War to put that out in kind of February, spring of next year.
Yep.
Right. So they have a big play in the spring, but then again, that pushes against that thought of having more frequent releases and more releases total in this console generation. Once you hit the 2-year point, I just don't know how much more time there is to peanut butter those big marquee releases out over the remaining life cycle of the
I
generation.
guess the question comes down to how many more years you think we got this generation. We just got here, so what, 6-7 more years?
I mean, this is the problem, and I mentioned this about GPUs too, right? Right, the RTX 3000 series GPUs are very likely to kind of be this lost generation of graphics cards.
Absolutely.
People have gotten them, and so the same is true of the Series XS and the PlayStation 5, because yes, it's the 2-year point, but I don't think that those consoles have been spread throughout the potential consumer base as widely as they could have been if we were not so ridiculously supply constrained as we are. And I know they're still being bought, they're still getting into the hands of gamers, but the fact of the matter is that over the 9 console generations that I've experienced in my lifetime, all the console generations, I've never seen supply constraint like we've had in comparison to demand like we've had this generation.
So it comes back to, so are you basically thinking that the generation is going to be just as long as a normal generation? Because a lot of people, even my thought process is, this generation is going to get extended due to that. So do we think
what's a normal generation anymore? I mean, the
well,
last
yeah,
one
that's
was 7,
true.
the one before that was 8.
7, 8, yeah. But anything past 7, like 7 and up. But everybody kind of was thinking like this generation was going to get extended due to the supply constraints and stuff. But do you think we're going to get the typical 7 to 8 years or 9 years like we normally do?
I mean, I think the thing that we're seeing from the tech industry is that the march of technology is going to continue, and it's not going to slow down or break stride because of supply constraint. They're just going to skip a generation and move on, and it's just going to be whatever it is. If it were going to be extended, I would have expected that we would have not had new GPUs coming out from NVIDIA and from AMD, and we know that AMD is really kind of the lifecycle driver for these consoles, right, as branches of the mainstream of what's in their product pipeline.
Yeah, but I always look at GPUs as something different because it's part of the PC market, and we listen, man, I'm going to probably get a 4000, don't even need it. Because that's just kind of
I already know you are, Forte. I know. I know you are.
But that's kind of the thought.
I'm not doing it.
Yes, you are. You are going to do it.
Unless Game Logic starts posting bills again.
Don't even lie to people and tell them you're not going to do it, because you're going to do it. But the simple fact of the matter is just when it comes down to it, when I look at it, it's a different consumer base. When you're talking about consoles, people buy a console and they'll sit on there's still people sitting on 360s and PS3s and stuff for some crazy reason. But I just don't see GPUs, like if they come out with a 4000 series next year, those are going to sell even to people that got the brand new one, just because everybody, for some reason, when it comes to the PC market, just likes the latest and greatest. Even if it gives you 1 frame extra or a little bit more power, they're still going to do it. I just look at two different consumer bases at that point.
Yeah, but it's not entirely solely based on the consumer facing side, right?
That's true. That's true.
Before is it has a ton to do with manufacturing. It has a ton to do with assembly lines and the way machines need to be upgraded, and it has a ton to do with fab. And once they make that move on to the next stage of their architecture, they're going to start converting all of the machinery and all of the automation and all of the processes to orient around that new product line. They're going to be less interested in having that production capacity pumping out last generation tech. And so
but they'll they do what they always do. They'll take the same generation and put it on a smaller process. So we will get the 5 nanometer version of these consoles very soon. And the question is, does that turn into a Pro? Almost certainly not. It's almost certainly going to be a slim model for both companies, more storage, cheaper to produce, and all this stuff. They will take their profits at that point. So that'll happen for a while. And I still think these systems are so well made in terms of, especially compared to last generation, that they could probably justify themselves a little bit longer. And these companies might look at it that way and just say, let's just keep taking our profit. We get to a 3 nanometer, yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that again. we'll make them even smaller and we'll put even more storage in it. And maybe we'll do a Pro at that point, but even then, probably not. So you're right that this stuff will continue, but and at a certain point, yes, everyone will look around and be like, okay, yeah, we've done that now. It has been 8 years, and we've been preparing for a next generation. Do we just pull the trigger now because it makes a lot of sense to move everyone over to these new fabs entirely with this new stuff, just so we can get the momentum going? Because that's super important. Probably, maybe, yeah. But I also think if they get any excuse to keep this generation going for 9 years, they'll take it. And so I think that's a distinct possibility when it wasn't in the past.
Especially when Nintendo's going to be probably doing it very, very soon with this.
Yep.
The fact that they could come out with a system that is super underpowered and still sell like crazy, and it's probably going to still, and it's not even probably, it's going to still sell like crazy to the majority of people. That, you know, Nintendo and not Nintendo, Sony and Microsoft sees that, even though they're kind of different consumer bases when it comes to like the type of games that they play, it's still the fact of it's like, hey, they can sell these consoles even in this climate. We can do the same thing too. And the thing is, we always tell people, like, going from that big thing, going from 30 frames to 60 frames, like, there's a lot of people that still even haven't experienced that. Like, there was so many people that were like, I don't see the benefit of it. 60 frames per second. This and that, blah, blah, blah. But as soon as they got over there, they were like, oh, I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know what I was doing. And that's going to still linger for a lot of people for some years. I mean, we haven't really got games that even really take advantage of the hardware that we have completely yet. And I do agree. They do want to get more games out in a generation, but I'm thinking more of once they get to like year 4, that's like the halfway point. Then you're going to start seeing, like you said, if they don't get a game, if they get their game out at year 4, there's a good chance you probably won't see another one from them until like the beginning of the next generation. Compared to like if God of War comes out this year or next year, it's a good chance you'll still catch one right at the very end of the generation. It will just be another cross generation game, just like it was when it comes to like Ghost of Tsushima and everything like that. Any game that released in this generation,
Ghost of what?
Tsushima.
Go ahead, man.
Tsushima. Yeah, that works for me.
I thought he said something else, but go ahead.
I think the dynamic that's going to be pushing it up against all that is, and I guess I'll go as far as agreeing that it's a possibility. I don't think it's over a 50% possibility. That I think the thing is, yes, consumers might still be, there might be pockets of demographics of consumers that are still willing to buy this stuff. But again, I go back to AMD doesn't want to continue processing and manufacturing that same past generation technology and architecture when they have something to move on to.
Right.
In the PC gaming space, the most widely distributed, as far as we can tell, if you look at Steam as an indicator, right, graphics card is still the GTX 1060, right, at 8%. Newer generations of cards are down at 2% at best, I think, for an RTX 3060, and an RTX 2070 is pretty nearby. Everything else falls down in the 1% range. And yet, we still have the march of technology that goes on, right? 2, 3 now generations of GPUs later. And again, what the consoles are getting are derivative byproducts of that technology and those fabrication processes in manufacturing. So I think at the end of the day, and as those production pipelines get retooled, producing that old technology becomes more expensive. Yes, NVIDIA is doing a thing, but I'd hazard a guess that being that NVIDIA has moved at least, I think, 2 generations on from that processor that the Nintendo Switch is running, that there's got to be a reason at a premium price to keep NVIDIA pumping that thing out. And at a certain point, that doesn't become upside and good for Nintendo. So Nintendo is very likely probably going to have to move on as well, right, in pretty short order. But I think at the end of the day, that continuing march of hardware technology is gonna push against any notion of extending this console generation out significantly further, than it has been, simply due, that it won't be something that they do simply due to price constraints. Again, because what's going to start happening is growth is going to start flattening out, and then is going to start going down, and that's going to push them to wanting to release the next console generation.
Yeah, I think you're right about, especially with Nintendo, because they just hit the 5-year mark on their system with no refreshes. I mean, yeah, they put, they made it smaller. They put an LCD screen, an OLED screen on it and stuff. So yeah, they did move to a smaller process. I mean, they did do this thing that we were talking about, but they just
gave us more battery life out of it. And
that's all they basically did.
Yeah, and that's what these companies are almost certainly going to do as well. And you know, and yeah, I mean, it's AMD, but it's TSMC, it's you know, the Taiwan semiconductor company that is actually responsible for making these things. And they do, I think they're, especially now after this pandemic, they are much more likely to be in a situation where they're like, if anyone wants to keep using these older fabs, we will want to keep that stuff going. Because we found out that keeping that stuff going longer is much more stable and much more reasonable. But I don't know how, you know, 5 years from now, the world could be a very different place. So who knows if they maintain that sort of thinking about their process.
Yeah,
I think what's going to happen is, and at least from the Microsoft standpoint, is Microsoft is going to keep releasing new versions, new SKUs. They already switched their naming convention to allow them to just add a letter on to the end, and it'd be a new console, and people understand.
Yes, I think you're very right.
And they said it. They've said it multiple times in various ways. They talked about how they didn't believe in generations anymore. They talked about how they moved their the GDK, their game development kit over to a method of, well, not a method, but a kit that allows developers to make one build of a game and it be playable on, say, an Xbox Series S, X, or whatever generation they go up to. So they've already kind of transitioned themselves, and for their partners, their third-party developers that make games for them, to allow them to kick out new consoles, new hardware. They said they never want to be in a position where they are worse than their competition when it comes to hardware. Well, how do you do that? You are consistently dropping new hardware. Because
there's a phone method. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It wouldn't be strictly the phone, because like Samsung and Apple, they come out with a new phone every year, and that's like a little too much of the video game industry. But absolutely. I can see every 3 years, every 3 or 4 years, there's a new Xbox coming out, and they would just phase out for now, they would phase out the Series S. The X would be the lower end, entry model, and then the new thing would be their high-end premium model, and they could just continue that going on. Meanwhile, a developer, it doesn't have to feel bad about the fact that I've been making a game for 4 years. It was supposed to be on the Series S, but is it still going to work? Is it still going to be, do I have to make a whole nother SKU to this in order to make it work? No, you don't. It's all one SKU. So at least with Microsoft, that's what they are attempting to do in order to make sure that they are always staying ahead of the new advancements in game development, as well as hardware, taking advantage of those things, while also making sure the developers aren't being left behind when they're working on, long-term AAA projects. Now, I think Sony will probably still be a bit more traditional, but we're definitely going to get a PS5 Pro. Like, that's a done deal, I think. I don't know when we're going to get it, but we're going to get one.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think Microsoft has done a lot of work to vastly flatten what would have normally been the kind of R&D bow wave and cost and expense and level of effort that they would have had to surmount by converting everything over to not just x86, but also with the movement of that DirectX group within Microsoft Gaming, giving them control of more of the entirety of the technology stack all the way down to the hardware abstraction layer. I think their ability to churn out, a next SKU, a next iterative model of a console is basically based on nothing but what their presumptions of consumer demand are, really. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think Sony's going to face, I would assume that what Sony has to meet in an R&D hump is significantly greater. And so it's going to be interesting to see how those kind of iterations play out and how the games scale differently across those different development environments, right? Because Microsoft builds on top of DirectX, Sony does not. Sony has some common abstraction components that all of the studios use, but it's not as unilateral as it is in the Microsoft camp.
Yeah.
But adding new hardware and adding new GPUs, I think, is less of an overall hump for Microsoft to accommodate than for PlayStation.
Yeah, that's a great point. Gentlemen, it is 11 o'clock, and do need to wrap up the show. BRAP needs to go to bed. But first I want to bed. Yeah, no, BRAP has to get to bed. What happened? Someone said coffee.
I said BRAP needs some coffee.
No, I actually I got to get up at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, so I got to get up bright and early. It's yeah. But no, first of all, big shout out to everyone in the live chat. Thank you everyone for tuning in and watching. Please hit that like button if you haven't done so already, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. Also want to give a big shout out to our guest this evening, Jeff Grubb. Jeff, thank you for coming on again. Always a pleasure having you on, and please let everyone know where they can find you if you want to be found.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, if you want to hang, join the Discord, discord.gg/game mess. We have community game nights. All the stuff we post ends up on there, so you can keep track of that stuff. Got a great community, great big community, ton of people hanging out there all the time. So if you want to keep up with the events as they get announced this summer, we do that here on that Discord as well. So yeah, just find me there. I'd really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And Game Logic, man, always a pleasure, man. Always, enjoy your insight. If you want to be found, let everyone know they can find you.
I don't want to be found.
Serious.
Like if you really find anything that I say of any interest, I'm out there. I'm sure you guys will come across my path.
Don't want to be found.
Yeah, I don't. Game Logic. I don't blame you, sir. I don't blame you. Forte. Look, anyone can find you. I think pretty easily, Forte.
Yeah,
but you have a show tomorrow with Slow-Mo, DPS.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this this audio clip that can't be found, but it's gonna be interesting tomorrow.
I don't know why you keep doing this to yourself, man. Like
it's fun.
All right,
it's all about fun, man.
We'll see how fun it is tomorrow.
If you find a clip of me saying that, then it's I'll just take it. It's cool. It's cool. I like this. It's like I like the energy. It's great. It keeps me invigorated. So I love you. So I hope you find it, but I don't think you will. But shout out to that DPS podcast will be tomorrow. It's on the boy Slow-Mo's channel. I'll let Slow-Mo talk about who the guest and everything is going to be. Going to be fun. Check me out, Gaming Forte everywhere, YouTube, Twitter, Xbox Live, PlayStation. Check it out on Fridays. We do the Xbox Roundup when it comes to all the stuff that's been going on inside of the community for Xbox. That's going to be a video that's every Friday. Every other day, if you love Destiny, that's what we pretty much do over there. Talk about all the stuff that's going on that the great Bungie has been giving us with Destiny. But that's about it. See you guys tomorrow on DPS.
You need to find that clip, Slow-Mo.
You ain't gonna find it. It doesn't exist.
I already know where to find it. It's gonna be the same week that Breath of the Wild 2 got delayed.
Okay, sounds good. We gotta go. Hurry up. Do your outro so we can get Jeff Grubb some food.
Hey,
he already left, so never mind.
Great show, guys. As Forte said, come join us tomorrow on my YouTube channel, Slow-Mo Backslap, Damage Per Second Podcast, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will be exposing Forte for claiming that he was right, and it was already, I should have already known because it was too late for Sony to announce God of War Ragnarok as actually coming out this year. So there'll be that. We're gonna have a special guest with us, and maybe two. We might have Agent Deli joining us, but will definitely have Randolph Thor 19 coming through. So come join us tomorrow. It's gonna be a good time. Forte is gonna be exposed and apologize, and it's gonna be great.
Yeah, if you want to hear them have a love triangle about books, definitely come through.
A love triangle about
that is funny. That is funny.
Because I guarantee you this what part of this conversation is going to be. Man, I love you for getting me into these books.
I got him into the book, by the way. So
I know,
yeah.
But I wouldn't say that
things wrong as usual.
By the way, speaking of Agent Deli, we're gonna have Agent Deli on BRAP next Wednesday. So definitely tune in to that. First time guest. So I know you guys have had him on DPS, but yeah, we're gonna have him on next week.
He's a staple.
Deli's a cool guy.
Oh, he's great. Yeah, no, I've been talking to him DM and stuff. So, looking forward. Very knowledgeable individual. All things in the gaming industry.
Interesting.
So, yeah. All right. So everyone, check out DPS tomorrow. Slow-Mo will provide the receipts. I am going to be
I want to know what's going to happen when he does it. When he comes on the show tomorrow, he doesn't have it.
You know what?
What are we going to
I just have this feeling that
this Forte is always running his mouth, and he's always wrong.
Forte is setting himself up for failure right now. And
no, I'm not. It's fun.
Forte,
what's going to happen to? Well, let me ask you a question.
Every time you do this,
if he finds this clip, what's really going to happen?
We're going to. What do you mean?
What's going to happen? What's going to really happen?
What's going to happen is that that Slow-Mo was right.
Okay.
He's used to me. He's used to me being right all the time. So it's
no, I mean,
I get it. He's like, what's
really going to happen
what's the
here?
Difference between
Forte, what's going to happen is we're no longer going to believe you anymore.
Or anytime,
We're not going to believe Forte anymore.
You're never supposed to believe what one person says anyway.
Well, Forte, if you said you didn't say something,
I said it was an opinion.
Oh, so now you're walking it back. See what he's doing, Slow-Mo?
I always said it was an opinion. He gonna find a clip, and that clip's gonna say exactly what I said.
No, it's not.
Go ahead.
It's gonna say, Slow-Mo. I told you that these games are going to be delayed. You should listen to me.
He said it was. I remember him saying that God of War was going to be delayed.
Then I told him. I said, look, I still think God of War is going to make it out this year. He laughed at me.
Okay, I said if we don't hear anything by July, it's over.
No, I told you they have until July. You said it was already too late for them to if they hadn't announced it already. It was a guarantee. It was already a guarantee that it was not coming out until 2023. This is what you said.
Okay.
I think the thing that'll be interesting to keep an ear to is their earnings call should be in about a week. On the 27th is when they're expected to drop earnings. So there would hopefully be some indicator buried in that.
Yeah, you'll get some type of, like, if you see some inflated numbers in there for the quarter, then you're like, okay, it's probably going to come out during this quarter.
Agreed. Yep.
Yeah, because this will be their. This is the end of the physical year for them.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
all right,
let's go. We get out of here.
Yep, I got to wrap. BRAP's got to go to bed. I got to get to sleep. I got stuff I got to do early in the morning. So on that note, we're out. Everyone, thank you. Big shout out to our guests, Game Logic and Jeff Grubb. Big shout out to everyone in the live chat. Thank you so much for hanging out this evening. Check out DPS tomorrow night on Slow-Mo's channel, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We're out.
Peace.